Damn it. Welcome to the PTA Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, John Caligiuri. I'm accompanied by my co-host, Nick Calling.
Howdy.
I'm very excited. We got two special guests here. We got Caleb Nolan. He was on one of our previous episodes. And also we got a new guest, Kyle. Kyle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm glad to have you. So tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so Caleb introduced me to you guys. We went to school together. I went to the Milwaukee School of Engineering, obviously in Milwaukee. Graduated there 5 years with both my bachelor's and master's congruently. Got my bachelor's in architectural engineering and master's in structural engineering. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was an easy decision for me to go to school for that. I've loved buildings my entire life. And yeah, that means I was a big Lego kid. Yeah, it was a super easy decision. And honestly, unlike most people, I really liked school. Thought I learned a lot. And I think it's, especially in my field, very valuable to have that schooling. And I've been able to carry it into my professional career. And right now I'm working down in Raleigh, North Carolina. I do primarily residential structural, designing homes and general home additions. I also do a lot of inspection work. So let's say a car hits a commercial building and it hits some of the load-bearing columns. I head out there, spend some time on site, take measurements of everything, and sort of come up with a fix as to how to keep the building standing. So it's been really nice to be in the field and using my degree every single day. So
that's awesome. We need people like you because I'm the person who'd run the car into the building and not know how to
fix it. I'll be the one that backing up and then the rest falls off and back up.
So you said you were always into Legos and things like that. Was that kind of like the impetus of you getting to the structural engineering? Because Caleb, what type of engineer are you? Just for the people.
Mechanical engineer.
Mechanical engineering. So could you one of you kind of break down the differences between mechanical and structural engineer?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see it as there's two super broad, high level types of engineering. There's the stuff you can see and touch, and there's the stuff you can't. For example, my girlfriend is a chemical engineer, and even though we're both engineers by title, she works in a completely different realm than I do. Everything I do every single day. And Caleb, for the most part, you have a general knowledge about the stuff you can't see too, but everything I do on a day-to-day is stuff you can see and touch and gets built and all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the similarities between ours. I mean, Caleb can tell you more about what he does, but mine is more so just life safety and very, very static. Everything is making sure everything stays still. And I'm pretty sure Caleb, yours is making sure everything moves appropriately.
Yeah, we've had that conversation before.
Yeah.
There's a flip side of the same quesadilla. So, Kyle, so you do a lot of like building work and inspections. So do you start at the beginning? So are you kind of the liaison between the person, like the inspector and the architect, or kind of where do you fit in the building process?
Yeah. So whenever I'm describing it to people, I always tell them I'm like a smart architect.
All the architects are going to hate you.
I know. I'm sorry. But an architect often deals with in a broader sense, they do a lot more than this, but they will design a building. So say they give us a drawing or a blueprint of how they want the building to be shaped. We ultimately design how it can be like that. How big do the members need to be in order to create that large of an opening, or how can we, have this giant thing sticking out of the building? What are the forces going on with that? So honestly, in building engineering, it's a big congruent collaborative process. But yeah, I always view it as the architect gives us a drawing and we make it stand up.
Must be nice to be an architect then.
It is.
You just gotta make it
Honestly,
look nice.
yeah. I wanted to be an architect growing up. I was just good at math and decided to do a little bit of both.
You're just smarter than the average architect, it seems like.
So with your
I propose that you
bachelor's-
guys start calling yourselves smartchitects instead of architects and see what they
Well,
do.
Caleb, you know my buddy John. We call ourselves smart architects. So.
So could you get your architect license with your career path that you've taken?
Yeah, so some of the people I went to school with ultimately after graduation just went into architecture because through our coursework, we did a little bit of architecture along with obviously our engineering classes. And they just decided they liked that more. And that was more so what they were looking at. So yeah, ultimately I could probably move jobs today and go into architecture. It's just not my forte. I'll be honest, I'm not as good at making a building look pretty as the architects are. So
So how would someone, if you, let's just say you're a high school kid right now, what would you say and they want to go down your career path, what things should they be doing? What things should they be thinking about? Like, how do you embark on this journey?
yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is you just gotta go in headstrong. I think there's a lot of joy in following something you're passionate with. Like I said, I enjoyed school, and I think that's purely because I always liked buildings. And so being able to study how they actually work was something that I was able to really nail down. In high school, I took an engineering class too, very broad, low-level engineering, but sort of introduced me to all the different realms of engineering. And it's just, I don't know, just kind of see what you like, because engineering is such a broad field and there's a lot of different paths you can go down once you're in it.
So you were interested in engineering in high school, and you guys, Caleb and Kyle, you guys both met at Milwaukee School of Engineering. Like, this is for both of you. What kind of led you to deciding at that school? Because I've not met very many engineers, but everyone I've met from that school has been pretty squared away.
I think we both have the same answer, which is because we were going to play lacrosse there. So.
Yeah, a big thing for me too was there's only 20 schools in the US that offer architectural engineering. And so being so confident with that's what I wanted to do, it came easy. And then obviously lacrosse was a massive plus. But
this is a question for both of you. Caleb, I want to hear your best lacrosse story about Kyle, and Kyle, I want to hear your best lacrosse story about Caleb. Because Caleb, I have a story about you that I cherish fondly, because I met me and Caleb went to Wheat North High School together. Shout out the Falcons, and I believe senior or junior, I can't recall the time, but our team was not the best. We can all agree to that. We were average, and we were playing a game at night, and we lost. And someone said something to Caleb, or words were exchanged, and Caleb caught this guy, the crown of his helmet, right under the chin as the clock expired, and the guy was just knocked right out. And I will always remember that, because I was like, why? He just made us stay longer. I was so upset.
Well, it happens, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb, my story is kind of along the same lines. So I think you got some soul searching to do here. But we were playing in a college game against one of our sort of rival teams, and Caleb's running it up the sideline on a clear. And I mean, to be fair, the guy just completely comes out of nowhere and tackles him, just super dirty and everything. But that did not stop Caleb one bit. He immediately rolls on top of him while they're on the ground in the benches, because he got knocked into the benches, rolls on top of him and just lands a haymaker right then and there. You know, super intense game, and just yeah, just right.
The adrenaline was going.
Everyone's standing right there, just looking at these two, and yeah, there was no missing it.
There's a couple thrown, I believe.
Caleb,
I like to add that I was dragged out of that by my neck by a guy that's like 6'6", so my feet were like a foot off the ground as I was being carried out of that. But My favorite story about Kyle is probably how I met Kyle. Because we were sitting none of us knew each other, and we were all just going around in a big group because it was the lacrosse freshmen and we were all on the same floor. And so we all go to the volleyball game together, and Kyle's sitting in the bleacher row right in front of me, and we were talking like as a group, and then we had like a little side conversation. He turned around to say something, and his mouth was wide open, and I just went boop and just stuck 2 fingers into his mouth. I like didn't know him at all. And he told me later that he called his mom and told her that he didn't know if he made the right decision to go to MSOE.
There's a lot of weirdos here.
Yeah, well, I was just turning around to talk to some of my new friends that I had made, and my mouth is open, ready to say something, and all of a sudden, this random kid that lives on my floor just sticks 2 fingers down my throat, and I'm like, wow, okay, that's not supposed to happen.
That's such a Caleb Nolan story.
That was young. That was prior to college.
He still does that in the workplace. He just-
Yeah, my
What
boss
do you think
keeps
about
his
it?
mouth open too long.
That was a dumb question.
Yeah, that was a stupid question. You remember to watch what you say.
Yeah.
It's a good technique for people to keep them to shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Or if
So-
you're looking to spend a lot of time in court.
So did you guys' paths like in school ever intertwine? So like, because I know you guys are on different sides of the house, but during the curriculum, still like at baseline, did you guys ever take classes and stuff together, or is it really that divided between structural and mechanical engineering? It's like I'm talking about purely like course load.
Yeah, I mean, we take a lot of the same base classes, I would say freshman, sophomore year. I don't think we ever had a class together though. That doesn't ring a bell, but yeah, we take like all the same base math classes. You know, the reading classes, as rigorous as English classes are at an engineering school. And yeah, like chemistry, stuff like that. So I don't think we actually ever took any classes together, but I would say around junior year, it becomes really divided.
Okay, that was really kind of the crux of my question, because a lot of our listeners are between 18 and 25. So if someone is interested about becoming an engineer, I just want to for their essay of when they have to decide. Because did you guys both know what you want to do? Did you always know you want to be a structural engineer? Did you always know you want to be a mechanical engineer, or was those first 2 years was kind of like the impetus for you deciding your career path?
Well, Kyle had the Lego story, so I think he always knew that he wanted to
Yeah.
build stuff.
Yeah, I pretty much always knew I wanted to go into structural. But that being said, also, like if I decided halfway through sophomore year to switch to mechanical, I don't think it would have been too hard to catch up, just because so much of that start is the base classes. Like I would have had to take the like basics of mechanical engineering as well, but just having those core classes is kind of the start of the engineering curriculum.
Okay. So what did you graduate from school?
2023.
2023. So kind of take us through your average day.
He got a master's with his bachelor's, so it was like a 5-year program.
Not a big deal. Slight humble brag.
Yeah, it was actually really nice how they did it, because since they withheld one of my bachelor's classes every year, which might I say I finished strong with film and media studies as my last bachelor's course. I was able to keep my scholarships and pay undergraduate tuition the whole time. So it's a super smart system they have going there.
So they hooked you up. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
So upon graduation, kind of what is your day-to-day as a structural engineer? I know you talk about you're a smart smart architect, but what is kind of your day to day? What's the process for the layman for the kid in high school thinking about embarking on this journey? Like, give them a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for them.
Yeah. I mean, especially in my field, there's a lot of, like I was saying, it's so much of a collaborative process. You spend a lot of your day talking to contractors, clients, architects. There's a lot of communication. I would consider this field a very social field. Day to day, I spend a lot of time in the field just in my particular realm of work. So typically I spend my mornings in the field. I get to work a little earlier, go out in the field and come back to the office for lunch, take care of any calculations, any report writing I have to do, maybe get some design work in, crunch some numbers, and just kind of, it's really nice to have that split of all the field time that you get. It really makes the days go by quicker.
That's awesome.
It's not a cubicle kind of job.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big reason I took this, is because I mean, I'm out in the field every day, and it's warmer in North Carolina than it is in Wisconsin. So
that's for sure. When you mean field, what do you mean by that? Are you like on the job site building skyscrapers, or because you said you do residential homes as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So sometimes that means going onto a job site and looking over plans with contractors, make sure they know exactly what it is they're building and exactly what the drawings we provide say. Sometimes that means, getting dirty and really inspecting stuff, making sure everything's built correctly. And sometimes it honestly just means going out to Topgolf at 10:30 on a Tuesday to meet some new clients and architects because they want to meet who their contractors and engineers are. So yeah,
Nice.
it really depends on the day. And yeah, sometimes.
Client relation.
Yeah, exactly.
The first thing in business is learn how to golf.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least go to Topgolf if you don't know how to.
Yeah, exactly.
Drink at Topgolf.
Yeah. Wings too.
Yeah.
That the net too. Have you guys seen those videos on Instagram or TikTok, whatever social media platform you choose, of those drunk fat chicks who fall into the net? I love those videos. No one, that's going to be me. Nick, do you have any more questions for Kyle? Like, because Nick is interested in going down this career field, possibly. So, Nick, do you have any questions about?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I guess you kind of answered the difference between what engineer and an architect does. I think a lot of people really don't know that, or even know that the roles that engineers take or their day-to-day operations. So I think this was really helpful for anyone that was kind of curious in these fields.
Because when I hear the term like, "Oh, you're an engineer," my mind pictures to you in a lab coat, some potions, maybe like a rat on a wheel, and you're talking about math things in a third language that I don't know anything about. That's how before we had Caleb on and you on, that's what I thought an engineer was, just a brainiac mixing potions with a lab coat on.
Or blowing stuff up.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a lot of my client interactions, you can tell that they expect me to be maybe nerdier than I am, and I think they're always pleasantly surprised, like, oh wow, this engineer can speak coherent sentences and wants to talk to me. That's crazy.
There's a divide in engineering amongst the people who can speak with clients and those who cannot speak with clients.
Caleb, give us a more deep dive into that divide. It seems that you're on the other side of the spectrum.
The antisocial nerd and the
no. I talk to clients all the time, but there's like people who are so steadfast in their ways with what they do that they will not speak, or if they interact with a client, it'll go poorly because if the client says something that's maybe not correct, that's not going to go unnoticed and it's going to be brought back up again. And there's going to be like they start fights, like basically because they're like, I'm smarter than you. I'm telling you what to do and you're not listening to me. So I've seen it happen before where dude literally got on the phone and he hung up the phone on the client. And it was like, I was like, what did you just do? And it's because he just shouldn't be talking to people because he has like the engineering, what is it, Kyle? The engineering mindset, the term that people have for how conceited engineers can be, where they're just like, no, I'm smarter than you. So you
Oh,
should
the God complex.
yeah, there you go. The
So
God
just
complex.
nerd big dick contest is what it sounds like.
I'm
Yeah,
better
I
than
guess.
you, and I know it.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I mean, even the specialties within engineering have quite the beef sometimes, and you know
Mhm.
that's even like my department to Caleb's department, and then even my structural specialty to the other specialties within my department. It constantly goes. It's such a competitive field.
Rank who's
I
the
feel
biggest bags in order? Like who does everyone hate? Who does everyone like? Like give us like the break. Give us you guys' rankings.
Everyone hates the architect.
These are personal rankings. I mean, there are general kind of like
I want to know. Don't give me personal. Give me the general. I want the inside scoop on who hates who in the architectural world. Or
I would say people generally respect my field less, just because it's at least perceived as easier. And I think a lot of that is because it's kind of that practical building that I was talking about earlier. Like, I mean, I knew Caleb my whole time in college, and he didn't even know some of the coursework that we did until the end of it. And he's like, "Oh wow, I didn't even know you guys did that." So I
they were
think
doing stuff in like their second year that we did in like the third year. For like the start of the second year, they were applying stuff that or starting to apply stuff in math class that we didn't even touch until the end of junior year.
okay.
yeah. So I mean, I think I don't know. Caleb can probably speak on this, but I think people don't necessarily like our field too much because it can be sometimes easier.
Yeah. I mean, people give mechanical engineers the same thing, like, oh, I could do what you do. And the issue is when it comes to using your hands to collect data, you have to be able to do that if you want to be like a tester R&D engineer. And if you can't do that, then you're not going to be good at it. So there's like a level of physical abilities. I've had people show up to work with me that I had to show them how to use a ratchet wrench, and I was like, this is just not going to go well here. I don't know what to do. Like I can't have you like collecting data. You have no idea what you're doing. So
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't know if there's a general pecking order. I think it's kind of how each is perceived, and how they think about each other mostly.
Okay.
Mhm.
I do want to know because you guys both mentioned clients. Because I know in the last episode, Caleb kind of broke down what his client would be. Kyle, what is like your typical client in your field?
Someone with a lot of money. You know,
Same.
yeah. I work in a lot of real estate transactions right now, and sometimes some of my clients are moguls that want to be building a giant complex. And yeah, I mean, you need a lot of money to build big buildings, and so a lot of times a client is generally they come to that first meeting and then they're standoffish after that. They pass it off to the architect, which is another thing an architect does is they kind of manage everyone. They're the one that communicates directly with the client or owner, and then they manage the contractor and the engineer and all that stuff. So yeah. Typically someone with a lot of money that's relatively standoffish is my
Sounds like a perfect client, perfect customer.
Yeah.
Give me all your money and shut up.
I'm better than you. Click. Well, Kyle, thank you for that. Nick, we do have. I would be remiss that if I had two engineers on the podcast and not talk about AI. Nick, can you get the clip ready? I would just, as a monkey compared to you guys, I would really like to hear you guys' thoughts on this clip and kind of expand on it. I know this is very basic of our pod, but it is what it is.
Mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes.
I think the danger of AI is much greater than the danger of nuclear warheads by a lot. And nobody would suggest that we allow anyone to just build nuclear warheads if they want. Mark my words.
Okay, so
how's that?
question about that is I know that he was probably at like a UN meeting or a political meeting. Is my real question is come from some guys in your guys' field of like the Brainiac field. Is it as dangerous as everyone's talking about, or is everyone being dramatic?
No, it is definitely as dangerous as Elon is saying. And here's the thing: is people are scared of it for the wrong reason. I think people are scared of it because most people envision AI as a humanoid robot that you can't discern from another human. So it's dangerous because it can interact with you and be smarter than you. But that's realistically not the form that it would come in. So the way that AIs work currently is they make a neural network to perform a specific task, and then they'll have all these different. And the specific task is like identify a monkey, and then you take another one that says identify a cow, and then you take another one that's identify a horse, and you have all of these, and you mash them together with another algorithm, and then it can identify a bunch of different animals. One algorithm can identify a bunch of different animals. So if the danger is that there's all these free tools and it's so available, like you have people experimenting with it at their house on their Mac that costs $600 brand new. So it's not like something that costs a lot to get into. And you can, as I talk about actually in my blog post that I made, the danger is that you can have, like, the flip side of what I was talking about is that you can have one person create a very dangerous technology alone that has morals that are completely aligned with whatever they have. And if what they want is chaos, then they can create chaos. So, I mean, we live in a world where DJI drones are outperforming military drones that were in use from like 10 years ago. So you could have, like, for surveillance stuff. So you could literally take like a DJI drone and do some significant, like, either information reconnaissance, or you could put a weapon on it and do some damage. So like people don't realize exactly how dangerous the technology that we have as consumers it could be if leveraged as a weapon. And so the danger is if AI gets to the point where it can do a little bit higher involved tasks than what it can do now, and somebody just sicks it on the world, it could be an issue.
Okay. This is just for pure business, because that's understandable. If you don't want some Joe Schmo in their basement who hasn't spoken to a woman in 35 years, who's angry at the world, creating chaos. So like more of a business question, Kyle, have you guys seen it like kind of disrupting your fields at all? Because to me, like me and Nick are salesmen. We're replaceable. We're the first people on the chopping block. You guys have to go through like more schooling. Has it been disrupting your guys' field at all, or can you see potentially disrupting your guys' field at all?
I could see it disrupting at a low level. I think in terms of engineering, so much of it is problem solving. And as of right now, again, this is kind of what Caleb was saying, what makes it so dangerous is that an AI wouldn't necessarily be able to engineer something because they can't, weigh all these different options and all the intangibles that exist, at least in my field. I've seen it a little, and it's only been in minorly helpful ways. Like I know there's some people that are able to sort of plug numbers into it and it will give them at least a starting point, but there's been nothing that have been able to develop a full building, all the connections, all the forces coming through, all of that stuff. There's been nothing even remotely close. It can design one of the 2,300 members in a building, but it doesn't know how all of those are going to get pieced together. And quite frankly, I don't know that it will in the foreseeable future, because no two projects are the same unless you're building a bunch of giant Walmarts in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, that makes sense. Caleb, because I know can you see disrupting your field at all, or because my personal biggest fear is it's going to replace like lawyers and accountants. I can see those people being put to the wayside from it, but I'm wondering at like a technical level, which you guys are at, if it will disrupt that field at all.
I think that there are fields of engineering that it would disrupt very heavily, like that it would probably completely remove. And then there are other fields that would not be really affected. They would be aided probably by it, because it's creative, it's highly creative, and that's one of the things that AI just isn't. So it's not able to, I mean, it might be able to figure out like very good options for you, but you're going to need creative input for the foreseeable future, I think. But if you're doing like really high level new design work, but at some point I think AI could probably replace everything. I mean, if you're talking, it depends on what scope you're talking. Like in the next 20 years, it'll definitely change. It'll definitely get rid of some engineering jobs in the next 20 years, I would think.
What engineering jobs would you think it would get rid of?
There are people who are basically just drafters that are engineers, and they're probably going to be gone for the most part. It'll be like one guy instead of a team of 5 people. You know, like nothing's going to completely disappear, because you're going to still need people to validate. You're going to need a human validator probably for a lot of stuff in engineering. So, I mean, it'll just reduce the number of job opportunities.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of like my biggest fear too. I think not just engineering. I think that's a global problem, or I believe that's a global problem that it's just going to severely limit the job market.
Yeah,
Soon a robot will be showing you homes.
Yeah, I was. That's kind of how I feel about it. Is I don't know. Obviously, there will be some fields that it completely eradicates, but I think if anything, it'll just trim the workforce. I think it'll sort of cut down on some of that unskilled labor. Just the pencil pushers, just doing the same repetitive task, because that's what it's ultimately good at, is that same repetitive task. But like Caleb was saying, once you introduce that creativity or novelty to something new, currently it does not have the capacity to handle that. Again, that depends what scope you're talking. But
yeah. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on. Do you have anything else you guys want to add?
Can't think of anything.
No, I guess just one closing thing with AI, just kind of to put it into a universally understandable thing. In engineering, I'm sure this is the case in a lot of other fields too. You sort of talk about the black box theorem. And it's why a lot of, at least my professors, didn't want us using Excel, was because how well can you understand something if you just type a bunch of numbers in and it spits out an output? And that's kind of the danger with AI, is you're putting all this stuff in and it's just giving you something new. So it just kind of that lack of understanding and just being able to plug things into this black box and it gives you something and you don't know what's going on in the interim.
I'd like to expound upon that as well. If you break math down in the engineering sense, there is a reason that you perform every single action, whether you're putting something in an exponent or you're multiplying or dividing. There's an actual physical relation to the real world why you're doing that. So if you can't do the equation, if you don't fully remember that equation to have it internalized in your head down to the finite detail of the physics, how the world is going to work in your application, then you're just simply not as well informed as somebody who can do that. So that's what they're talking about when they're saying black box versus understanding.
Which makes a lot of sense, especially when you're dealing with complex things. Just I'm going to use a recent example with the Boeing and the door falling off. I'm not going to say that's due to AI, but that kind of comes back to some of our previous episodes of like ESG and things like that. Of, are you really hiring the best person anymore? And Now, is it going to disrupt the education field of, because are you going to trust an 18-year-old kid to do the math problem, or does he want to go get drunk and high with his friends and plug it into ChatGPT and do his math homework for him? Which I think is a very valid concern.
That is a valid concern. My younger sister is studying to be a teacher, and she was just telling me about how the ability of American students to read at their grade level is so awful that we're not even in the top, like, we're not even in the top 10 anymore. Like in cities, it's under 50%, I think, that can't read at their grade level, which is insane. Like that's, think about that when just we were growing up. Like it is happening. These kids are cheating on everything and they're not learning stuff. So it's valid. It's a real issue.
It's going to rear its ugly head in the future when they do enter the workforce. As because I went to high school with Caleb. Caleb knows. I'm sure he has some stories to tell about me. I was not the best student out there, but you do need to know how to read and problem solve and communicate effectively. And if you don't have the baseline of reading, and you're not gonna be able to figure so much stuff out, because even at the bank, they have every problem they have it typed out for you in step by step by step. So if you can't read and comprehend, it's going to be very hard for you to problem solve and progress. Even at my level of banking, which there's little to no math involved, but reading and writing is definitely an important skill to have.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking that they aren't realizing, like nobody's showing them that it's important to have those skills. Like they don't the reason they're not learning it is not because they can't. It's because they don't see a reason why they should, and nobody's explaining to them why.
Yeah, I kind of disagree. I agree and disagree with you. It's kind of disheartening to me that no one's holding these kids accountable, because back in the day, like I'm 25 years old, people held me accountable for being an idiot in school. You know what I'm saying? I got my detentions, my Saturday school. People held my feet to the fire, and I feel like that's the missing link in this whole system. You got to hold people to the fire. Now everyone's like has an issue. They're doing this and doing that, and they're just pushing people through, which to me is alarming.
Yeah, my parents made me go to summer school before for bad grades, and I mean, there's some element of having to go to another town to sit in school for one class for 6 hours makes you just go, well, you know what? Even if I don't agree with this, I'm just not going to send myself here again. And I'm just going to try it harder. So,
yeah, especially I don't want to sound like a parent because I do not have any kids. I don't even have a dog. I can barely keep a goldfish alive at this point. But holding people accountable, I definitely think is kind of the missing link in not the education system, but I think in American society that we kind of lost sight of.
Yeah, I think people don't really think long term as much anymore, the younger generation, because I mean, I don't know, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not going to read into it, but I mean, you have all this immediate gratification with social media and with like DoorDash and whatever you choose to describe it. Technology is providing people instant gratification, and they're losing sight of long-term goals. And it's a lack of personal accountability. But
Caleb, I kind of disagree with you there, because if you think about in 1927, you could sneeze and could die the next day. The medical fields, stuff like that. I don't think people back in the day thought long term. I just think it's way easier to be lazy now. It's so much easier to check out. It's so much easier to use ChatGPT to graduate from college. It's so much easier. You don't have to cook. You can just order Uber Eats. You don't have to, because I'm sure your grandparents complained. Back in my day, I had to change the TV channel with the dial in front of the TV. Now you can just put a cue on Netflix. You can search up whatever song you want. I don't think people are losing sight of thinking long term, because I don't think anyone ever really thought long term. I think a percentage of the population definitely did, but I think it's just way easier to be lazy.
I mean, I think that is true. There is an element of that. So you definitely can't blame it all on not thinking long term. However, I think that long-term thinking was a much more developed skill even just like 50 years ago, because there wasn't this thought in the back of everybody's head, I could just get really rich tomorrow. Like people think that way a lot more nowadays. So they don't invest. When they're making the decision of what they do with that with like $5 that they just have left in their wallet. Do I spend this or do I put it in a box? Like there's a lot more people I feel like that would spend that now than wouldn't, because they didn't have the value of not even, I'm not necessarily talking about like 20 years down the road. Like, are they thinking about next month or like 6 months from now, a year from now? Like I realistically, and lots of people aren't. The number of people that are living paycheck to paycheck is going up, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But I feel like this has to be part of it too, because people are spending so much money, and they're just not just their money, their time.
Yes, no,
Yeah.
I agree.
So I have this stat up. 36% of Generation Z expects to retire by 50. So only like 36% of Generation Z are even thinking about retirement. This was from the Harris Poll Foundation. So I don't know if you think that's reliable, but
That guy Nick. Does anyone else
that's
have
crazy.
anything-
I mean, retirement's the only thing I think about.
Yeah.
like you got to plan for the future. But
Does anyone chime in? Anything else?
Yeah, I think I just want to highlight, like, you guys disagreeing on the exact approach there, I think is universal. I don't think anyone has the exact reason why this is all happening. Everyone has their theories. Like, for example, to highlight one of mine, I had a conversation with a good friend of mine who's also a structural engineer, actually just 2 days ago, about sort of why we're seeing what we see in the world right now. And he, as morbid as it is, he brought up the point that there's not bullying anymore. And taking a broader sense from that is, in my personal opinion, I feel like there's not that action and consequence in a lot of people's daily life. I mean, just having something you do have a consequence is starting to dwindle in society. And some of the best lessons I learned was because I had to suffer through my mistakes. And like some of the bullying thing, it's not bullying, but my physics teacher in high school, I went up to him and I asked, "Hey, I'm at an A-. You think you could bump me to an A? I'm almost there." And he's like, "What profession do you want to go into?" And I said, "Well, I want to be a structural engineer." And he's like, "Well, I'm not going to bump your grade if you're going to someday be designing something I'm standing in." And to this day, I remember that every single day, because if I was going to be doing something that directly affected him, why I need to truly understand that I did not get an A in this class and that I can be better.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that's what separates America from everyone else, is that even at the lowest level of teaching, that you can impact someone's life, that not even in your career field. Because I don't think, Kyle, you ever dreamt of becoming a teacher or professor, but that one little conversation of holding you accountable can propel you to do bigger and better things.
Yeah, and I bet that professor doesn't remember it. He probably just remembers me as the guy who caused all sorts of trouble and just happened to pass his class and all this stuff. But I haven't gone too many days without thinking about it. So it's stuff like that that's super important, and to get into people's minds when they're young, that like you can pave your own path and make what you want of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys so much for your time. All your socials and stuff you want to shout out will be linked in the description. Thank you so much, everyone who's listening. God bless and have a good rest of your night.